You don't grow faster by tearing yourself apart. You grow faster by giving yourself room to improve. Too many people live their days under constant pressure, demanding perfection and punishing themselves for every slip. They replay mistakes until they feel defeated, compare their progress with others until they feel behind, and hold standards so high they can never breathe. No wonder they feel stuck, tired, and never enough. But it doesn't have to stay this way. In this message, you'll hear how to break that cycle. You'll discover how to catch negative self-talk before it takes over, how to recognize the progress you overlook, and how to treat mistakes as lessons instead of verdicts. You'll learn practical steps to set fair goals, respect your limits, and build patience with your own growth. If you've been carrying the weight of harsh self-judgment, this may be the moment everything begins to change. Number 1, admit you feel pressure and start questioning its source. Admitting you feel pressure is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of self-awareness. Many people spend their lives pretending everything is fine, while inside they are carrying a heavy weight. They wake up every morning with tension in their chest. They go through their day with thoughts running faster than they can handle. And at night, they lie awake wondering why they never feel at peace. That pressure builds because it is never acknowledged. The first real step to stop being so hard on yourself is to stop hiding from the fact that you feel it. You cannot change what you refuse to face. The human mind is complex, but it is also honest when you give it a chance. When you admit you feel pressure, you bring the hidden stress to the surface. That means you are no longer pushing it down into silence where it can grow stronger. You are saying, I recognize what is happening inside me. Most people never even do that. They keep going on autopilot, blaming themselves for not being strong enough. And the pressure continues to grow. By admitting it, you give yourself the freedom to begin questioning where it is coming from. Think about your own life. You may feel pressure from your work, from expectations of your family, from financial responsibilities, or from comparing yourself to others. Sometimes the pressure is not even yours. It is pressure you absorbed from people around you. Maybe it came from parents who demanded too much, or from a boss who never acknowledges your effort, or from social media that constantly shows you someone else's highlight reel. When you feel that tightness in your chest or that restless energy in your body, stop and ask, where is this coming from? Do not judge yourself for feeling it. Just observe it. When you start questioning the source of your pressure, you begin to separate what belongs to you and what does not. If the pressure is coming from your own high standards, you can examine whether those standards are fair. Are you expecting yourself to be perfect every day? Are you demanding results without giving yourself time to grow? That is an unfair expectation that no human can live up to. If the pressure is coming from others, ask yourself why their opinion has so much power over your peace of mind. Do they truly understand your journey? Do they live your life for you? The moment you question the source, you loosen its control. This process requires honesty. You cannot soften the truth if you want change. If you feel pressure because you are afraid of failure, admit it. If you feel pressure because you are living to please others, admit it. If you feel pressure because you think you are behind in life, admit it. Only by naming it can you take action against it. Otherwise, the pressure stays like a shadow you never look at directly. And shadows always look larger when you avoid them. Now think about how pressure feels in your body. For some people it shows up as tight shoulders, for others as a heavy stomach, for some as headaches or racing thoughts. These signals are your body's way of telling you something is wrong. When you admit to yourself, I feel fears right now, you are listening to your body. You are not pretending. You are not suppressing. That alone can release some of the tension, because your body is no longer forced to scream at you for attention. Once you have admitted it, the second step is to question the truth of it. Not every pressure is based on reality. Sometimes your mind creates pressure out of habit. For example, you may feel pressure to respond to every message instantly, even though no one truly requires that of you. You may feel pressure to look a certain way, even though nobody is keeping score. You may feel pressure to succeed quickly, even though growth takes time. The key is to ask yourself, is this pressure real? Or is it something I am creating in my own head? You might discover that half the pressure you feel is imagined, It is built on assumptions about what other people think. You assume people expect you to always be strong, to never make mistakes, to always be productive. But if you actually questioned them, most would not say those things. They would tell you they did not even notice. So here you are, holding yourself to rules that no one else has written. This is why questioning the source is so powerful. It shows you how much of the weight you carry is unnecessary. There is also pressure that is real. The bills need to be paid. Deadlines need to be met. Commitments must be honored. That pressure cannot simply be ignored. But when you face it honestly, you can find solutions instead of drowning in the feelings. If the pressure comes from work, you can harness tasks, ask for help, or set boundaries. If the pressure comes from money, you can make a plan to manage expenses, save more, or earn extra. If the pressure comes from family expectations, you can communicate more openly about what you can and cannot do. Action reduces pressure, but you can only act once you clearly see the source. Too many people confuse pressure with identity. They say, I am just a stressed person, or I am just never enough. That is not true. You are not pressure itself. You are experiencing pressure, and experiences can change. The key is to separate who you are from what you feel. When you admit you feel pressure, you are saying it is an experience, not your identity. That simple shift gives you the power to work on it, rather than surrender to it. Ask yourself right now, what are the top 3 sources of pressure in your life? Write them down if you can. When you see them clearly on paper, they lose some of their power. Now go through each one and ask, is this pressure real or imagined? Is it mine or borrowed from someone else? That clarity will show you which battles are worth fighting and which weights you can simply put down. There is also a psychological reason behind this step. The human brain looks for threats to protect you. When it senses pressure, it thinks you are in danger. But most of the time, you are not in danger at all. You are just under stress. When you admit it and question it, you calm the brain's alarm system. You tell yourself, this is not life or death. This is stress I can understand and manage. That allows you to regain control. Think about how children handle pressure. When they feel it, they cry, they talk about it. They show it openly. They do not hide it or pretend it does not exist. But as adults, we learn to hide everything. We put on a strong face, even when inside we are collapsing. That habit only makes the pressure worse. Real strength is being able to say, yes, I feel pressure. Now I will understand it. That is not weakness, that is courage. Why are we so hard on ourselves when we feel pressure? Because we expect ourselves to never feel it. We think successful people never feel overwhelmed. We imagine strong people struggle. That is false. Every person alive feels pressure at times. The difference is that some people acknowledge it and work through it, while others deny it and let it eat them alive. Which choice do you want to make? From this day forward, practice admitting pressure as soon as you feel it. Say to yourself, I feel it right now. Notice where it shows up in your body. Notice what thoughts are running in your mind. Do not push it away. Then immediately question where it comes from. Ask yourself, is this from me or from someone else? Is it real or is it imagined? These 2 questions can reduce half of your burden. Remember this, pressure does not disappear by ignoring it. It grows. Pressure does not destroy you by existing. It destroys you when you pretend it is not there. By admitting it and questioning it, you turn it from an enemy into information. And information gives you choices. Choices give you freedom. That freedom is the first step to stop being so hard on yourself. Now imagine living with this habit for the next year. Every time you feel pressure, you notice it quickly. You question where it comes from. You separate real from imagined, yours from others. You take action where necessary and release what is not needed. Over time, your body feels lighter, your thoughts are calmer, and your decisions are clearer. That is the life you can build when you admit your pressure and question its source. So stop punishing yourself for feeling it. Start acknowledging it. Use it as feedback, not as a verdict. The moment you do this consistently, you will notice your relationship with yourself change. You will not attack yourself anymore for feeling human. You will understand yourself. And once you understand yourself, you can grow stronger without carrying unnecessary weight. That is how you stop being so hard on yourself. Number 2, notice the words you use when judging yourself. The words you use when you judge yourself shape the way you see your entire life. If you call yourself a failure, you will feel like one. If you constantly say you are behind, you will live every day, rushing to catch up. If you remind yourself you are not good enough, your mind will find endless reasons to prove it true. Human beings underestimate the power of their own language. The words you speak to yourself quietly in your thoughts are more powerful than the words anyone else speaks to you out loud. They determine your confidence, your actions, and your future. Most people do not pay attention to the exact words they use in their self-talk. They just let the thoughts run unchecked. They wake up in the morning, look in the mirror, and think, I look terrible today. They finish their work, and instead of saying, I did my best, they say, I should have done better. They make a small mistake and immediately tell themselves, I'm so stupid. These words sink deep into the subconscious mind, and over time they build a permanent image of who you believe you are. That image then controls what you believe you deserve. If you want to stop being so hard on yourself, you must begin by noticing the words you choose. Awareness is the first step. Pay attention the next time you miss a deadline, forget something, or fall short of your goal. Do you say, I always mess everything up? Do you say, I never get it right? That language is absolute. It leaves no room for growth. It tells your mind that your mistakes define you completely. This is not just negative, it is destructive. If you repeat it long enough, you will start to live as if it is the truth. Changing this starts with catching those words as they appear. Instead of I always fail, you can notice the pattern and say, I didn't do as well this time. Do you see the difference? One statement kills your spirit. The other leaves space for improvement. Instead of I never get it right, you can say, I missed this one, but I can learn. The second statement recognizes the mistake without destroying your identity. This is not about positive affirmations that you do not believe. It is about using accurate, fair, and realistic words that reflect growth instead of punishment. Think about the language you would use with someone you love. If your child made a mistake, would you say, you are worthless, you always fail? If your best friend forgot something, would you say, you are so stupid, you never get it right? You would never say that to someone you care about, but you say it to yourself every day. Why is your language harsher with yourself than with anyone else? That is the psychology of self-judgment. You believe being hard on yourself will make you stronger, but in reality, it tears down your ability to try again. The mind listens to repetition. If you keep using negative words, they become your default thinking pattern. If you replace them with fair and supportive words, those new patterns will shape your reality. This is not instant. It takes attention and practice. But the shift begins with simple awareness. Every time you catch yourself using harsh words, pause. Ask yourself, would I say this to another person? If the answer is no, then do not say it to yourself. Replace it with words you would use for someone you respect. Your brain cannot tell the difference between external criticism and internal criticism. When you call yourself weak, your body reacts with stress. Your shoulders tighten, your chest feels heavy, your energy drops. That is the physical effect of your words. On the other hand, when you speak encouragingly to yourself, your body relaxes. You release tension. You feel calm enough to think clearly and act effectively. This is why noticing the words you use is not just emotional. It is also biological. If you have lived years judging yourself harshly, your inner vocabulary may be filled with words like stupid, lazy, worthless, behind, not enough. These words act like chains that hold you down. To break them, you must build a new vocabulary. Words like learning, improving, trying, building, progressing, growing. These are not empty motivational phrases. They are accurate descriptions of what is happening in your life when you are putting in effort. They keep you honest without destroying your confidence. Notice also how much of your self-judgment comes from comparisons. You might say, I am not as successful as him, or she is smarter than me, or I will never catch up to them. These words put you in a losing position before you even begin. You are setting standards that are not even based on your own life. The truth is, you cannot compare your journey with someone else's because you are living with different circumstances, challenges, and opportunities. When you notice yourself using mirroring words, stop and redirect your language. Instead of "I am behind them," say, "I am working on my own progress." Instead of "they are better than me," say, "I can learn from them." The words you use here decide whether comparison destroys you or inspires you. Judging yourself harshly also shows up in the way you talk about your future. If you tell yourself, "I will never change," you are programming your mind to stop trying. If you tell yourself, "I am too old, too slow, too late," you are shutting the door before it even opens. Notice those words. They sound final, but they are only thoughts. They are not facts. Replace them with words that leave possibilities open. Say, "I can still change if I commit." Say, "It may take longer, but I can improve." These are realistic words that invite growth instead of locking you in hopelessness. The thesis of noticing your words also requires slowing down. Many people speak to themselves so quickly that they never realize how cruel they are being. By the end of the day, they feel exhausted without knowing why. Slow down enough to hear your thoughts. Pay attention to the tone you use. Are you harsh, impatient, unforgiving, or are you gentle, fair, and patient? You cannot change what you cannot hear. Awareness of tone is just as important as awareness of words. When you notice your language, you are shining a light on the hidden rules you have been living under. You might discover you have been calling yourself lazy, even though you work hard every day. You might realize you call yourself weak, even though you have overcome more most people. These discoveries show you how unfair your self-judgment has been. That unfairness has kept you hard on yourself without reason. Recognizing it allows you to rebuild your self-image based on truth instead of harsh exaggerations. Changing the words you use when judging yourself is not about lying or sugarcoating reality. If you missed a responsibility, you should acknowledge it. But you can acknowledge it with fairness. Say, "I didn't follow through this time, but I can do better tomorrow." That is different from saying, "I never keep my word." One is constructive, the other is destructive. One opens the door to improvement, the other slams it shut. Think of the impact this shift will have on your daily life. When you start using words that are realistic and encouraging, you will begin to feel lighter. Your confidence will grow because you are not constantly tearing yourself down. Your energy will improve because your body is not under constant stress from harsh self-talk. Your relationships will also change. When you are kinder to yourself, you naturally become more patient and kind with others. This is the ripple effect of changing your inner world. Most people live their entire lives without ever examining how they talk to themselves. They put in effort, they chase goals, but they sabotage themselves every day with language that crushes their spirit. Do not let that be your story. Decide today to notice your words. Pay attention to the exact sentences you say in your mind. Replace the ones that kill your confidence with words that allow growth. It will not happen overnight, but with practice, your inner dialogue will change. Over time, you will begin to trust yourself more. You will not fear mistakes because you will know you will treat yourself fairly. You will not dread challenges because you will know your inner voice will guide you, not punish you. This is what it means to stop being so hard on yourself. It is not about avoiding responsibility. It is about choosing words that push you forward instead of tearing you apart. Every day, you are shaping your future with the words you use on yourself. Choose them carefully. Notice them constantly. Correct them when they are unfair. Over time, you will see the difference not only in how you feel, but also in what you accomplish. Because a person who speaks to themselves with respect has the courage to try, the strength to continue, and the patience to grow. And that is the life you deserve to live. Number 3, stop repeating negative self-talk and choose calm thoughts. Negative self-talk is one of the most damaging habits a person can carry. It becomes a constant loop in the mind, running quietly in the background of every decision, every action, and every experience. If you repeat to yourself over and over that you are not enough, that you will never succeed, or that you always fall short, your mind accepts those statements as fact. And once your mind accepts them, you begin to act in line with them. This is how negative self-talk slowly destroys confidence, ambition, and joy. If you want to stop being so hard on yourself, you must break this cycle. The first step is to recognize the repetition. Negative self-talk often shows up as the same sentence, playing again and again. It might be, "I can't do this." It might be, "I'm not smart enough." It might be, "Nothing ever works for me." These sentences replay automatically, sometimes without you even realizing. They can repeat hundreds of times throughout the day, and every repetition strengthens the belief behind them. The reason you feel stuck is not always because life is impossible, but because your mind has been programmed to repeat the same destructive message. Stopping this cycle requires awareness. Notice what phrase keeps coming back to you when you face challenges. Pay attention to the exact wording of the thought. Do not brush it off or pretend it is not there. Listen to it clearly, because only when you know what it says can you replace it. If your mind says, "I can't handle this," stop and identify it. Once it is clear, you can begin the process of changing it. The goal is not to force yourself into unrealistic positivity. You do not need to tell yourself you are perfect or that everything is easy. That will feel fake, and your mind will reject it. The goal is to choose calm, balanced, and constructive thoughts that move you forward. Instead of "I can't handle this," you can say, "I will take this one step at a time." Instead of "Nothing ever works for me," you can say, "I will keep adjusting until I find a way." These are calm statements. They do not deny the difficulty, but they give your mind direction instead of despair. Think of the effect this has on your nervous system. Negative self-talk creates stress. It triggers your body to release tension, speed up your heart rate, and shorten your breathing. That is why people who constantly repeat negative thoughts often feel tired, restless, or heavy. Choosing calm thoughts reverses this. When you tell yourself, "I can handle this," slowly, your breathing slows, your muscles relax, and your mind clears. You move out of panic and into focus. This is not just emotional, it is physical. Your body responds directly to the thoughts you choose. Breaking the habit of negative repetition also means challenging its truth. When you say to yourself, "I always fail," ask yourself if that is really true. Have you really failed every single time? Or are you ignoring the moments you succeeded because your mind only remembers the negative? If you say, "I am not capable," ask yourself what evidence you actually have. Have there been times you solved problems, overcame obstacles, or finished what you started? Most often the truth is that you have plenty of evidence of strength, but the repetition of negative words has blinded you to it. One of the most practical steps you can take is to create a mental pause whenever a negative phrase begins. The moment you hear that familiar sentence in your head, stop it immediately. Do not allow it to complete the loop. Replace it instantly with a calm thought. At first, this will feel forced because the old habit is strong, but with repetition, the calm thoughts will begin to take over as the new habit. You will start to notice that the old phrases fear less often, and eventually, they fade into the background. Another strategy is to write down your most common negative phrases. Put them on paper so they are no longer hidden. Then write down a calm and balanced alternative for each one. Keep that list where you can see it every day. When the old thought appears, look at your new phrase and repeat it. This is training your brain with intention. Just as negative repetition programs you into weakness, positive repetition programs you into strength. Calm thoughts do not mean ignoring problems. They mean facing problems without tearing yourself down in the process. For example, if you make a mistake, negative self-talk will say, "I ruin everything." A calm thought will say, "I made a mistake and I can correct it." Both acknowledge what happened, but one destroys you while the other guides you forward. Calm thoughts are not denial. They are fairness. They keep you honest without stripping away your dignity. Notice also that negative self-talk often comes from voices you picked up in the past. Maybe a parent, a teacher, or a boss spoke harsh words to you, and now you repeat those words to yourself without realizing it. That is not your voice. It is borrowed. By choosing calm thoughts, you reclaim your own voice. You stop living under the echo of someone else's criticism. You begin to shape your own inner dialogue. based on who you want to become, not based on what Suan once told you. The human brain is wired to remember negative experiences more strongly than positive ones. That is why Vinic self-talk feels natural. It fits into that bias. But natural does not mean healthy. You must train first to notice when your mind leans to the negative and deliberately bring it back to balance. This requires discipline, but it is one of the most rewarding disciplines you can build. The person who controls their inner voice controls their entire future. Think about how many opportunities are lost because this repeated negative words. People never apply for jobs because they keep telling themselves they are not qualified. They never approach someone they admire because they keep repeating they are not good enough. They never start projects because the loop in their head says they will fail. None of this is about reality. It is about the prison built by repeated thoughts. By stopping the repetition and choosing calm alternatives, you open doors that you never thought were possible. This is not a quick fix. You may have been repeating negative phrases years, even decades. It takes time to retrain your mind. But every time you replace a negative sentence with a calm one, you weaken the old pattern. Over weeks and months, the difference becomes noticeable. You will find yourself less anxious, less self-critical, and more willing to try. That is the reward of persistence. Calm thoughts also build resilience. Life will not stop presenting challenges. You will face setbacks, criticism, and obstacles. If your mind automatically repeats negative self-talk, you will collapse under that pressure. But if your mind has been trained to respond with calm, you will handle challenges with strength. You will say, "This is hard, but I can manage it." You will say, "I will learn from this and move on." That inner calm becomes your anchor in storms. Another important piece is self-compassion. Many people think being hard on themselves keeps them disciplined. They believe self-criticism pushes them to improve. But the research is clear. People who treat themselves with compassion are more likely to grow. They recover faster from mistakes. They stay motivated longer, and they take healthier risks. Harsh self-talk crushes motivation. Calm self-talk fuels it. The difference is enormous. Begin practicing today. The next time a negative phrase appears in your mind, catch it, pause it, replace it with a calm statement. Do this again and again until it becomes your new habit. At first, you will notice hundreds of negative thoughts a day. Do not be discouraged. Each time you replace one, you are building strength. Over time, those hundreds become dozens, then a few, and eventually they fade almost completely. You deserve to live with an inner voice that supports you, not one that attacks you. You deserve to wake up in the morning without the weight of criticism before you even take a step. You deserve to approach challenges with clarity and courage, not with defeat before you begin. All of this becomes possible when you stop repeating negative self-talk and choose calm thoughts instead. This is not about perfection. You will still have moments of doubt. You will still hear old phrases at times, but now you will recognize them for what they are: habits, not truths, and you will have the tools to stop them and replace them. That is real progress. That is how you build a mind that works with you instead of against you. Remember this: your thoughts create your inner environment. Negative self-talk creates chaos, stress, and fear. Calm thoughts create stability, focus, and strength. The choice of which environment you live in is made in every sentence you repeat to yourself. Choose carefully, because the words you repeat today will shape the person you become tomorrow. Number 4, challenge the belief that mistakes make you worthless. Many people carry the hidden belief that mistakes make them worthless. It is not always spoken out loud, but it lingers in their thinking, showing up in the way they treat themselves after a failure. They miss an opportunity and immediately tell themselves they are useless. They fall short of their goals and believe they have no value. They make an error in judgment and feel like their entire identity is broken. That belief is one of the heaviest burdens a person can carry, because it ties worth to performance and perfection. The truth is, mistakes are not proof of worthlessness. They are proof of being human. Think about how early this belief is formed. Many grow up in environments where mistakes were punished harshly. A child who spilled a drink was called careless. A student who struggled with a subject was told they were not smart. An employee who made an error at work was shamed in front of others. Over time, the lesson becomes ingrained. If I make mistakes, I am less valuable. That thought sticks and becomes the lens through which every action is judged. Even small errors feel like proof of not being enough. The problem with this belief is that it confuses behavior with identity. Making a mistake is something you do. Worth is something you have. They are not the same. If you confuse the two, you will spend your whole life feeling fragile, because every mistake will threaten your sense of value. That creates constant fear, hesitation, and self-criticism. You avoid risks because you cannot bear the thought of being worthless if you fail. You stop trying because the price of error feels too high. To challenge this belief, you have to separate action from identity. A mistake is an event, not a definition. You can say, I made a mistake in this situation, without saying I am a mistake as a person. That difference is everything. People who grow and succeed in life understand that their errors do not decide who they are. They decide what needs to change, what needs to be improved, and what can be learned. The mistake becomes a signal, not a sentence. Think of how you see others when they make mistakes. If a friend forgets an important date, do you suddenly believe they are worthless? If a colleague makes a wrong calculation, do you believe their entire being has no value? Of course not. You may be disappointed, but you still see their worth as a human being. Yet when it comes to yourself, you apply a harsher rule. You forgive others, but you condemn yourself. That is the double standard that keeps you trapped in self-criticism. The truth is that mistakes are the very process through which improvement happens. Every skill you have today was built through errors corrected over time. You did not learn to read without stumbling over words. You did not learn to work without missteps. You did not learn relationships without misunderstandings. If mistakes truly made people worthless, no one on earth would have worth. The fact that you have made mistakes proves you are learning, not that you are failing at life. This belief must also be challenged by looking at evidence. When you made a mistake in the past, did your entire life collapse? Or did you adjust, recover, and keep going? Most likely, you continued. You learned something, and you improved. That shows the belief of worthlessness is false. Mistakes never erased your value. They gave you lessons that shaped your growth. Evidence from your own life is the strongest way to fight back against the belief. There is also a difference between responsibility and self-condemnation. Responsibility is, I was wrong in that choice, and I need to correct it. Self-condemnation says, I was wrong, so I am worthless. Responsibility builds growth. Condemnation destroys it. When you adopt responsibility instead of condemnation, mistakes become useful instead of crushing. You can admit errors clearly without using them as weapons against your self-esteem. Think about the emotional toll of living with the belief that mistakes equal worthlessness. You feel pressure to perform perfectly all the time. You hide your failures from others out of shame. You criticize yourself relentlessly for even the smallest misstep. That kind of internal punishment drains energy and makes life feel heavy. It is not the mistakes that break you. It is the judgment attached to them. If you could remove the belief, you would still make errors, but they would no longer carry the same destructive weight. Challenging this belief requires practice in self-compassion. Self-compassion does not mean excusing mistakes or ignoring them. It means treating yourself with fairness. When you make a mistake, instead of saying, I am nothing, you say, I slipped here and I will make it right. You acknowledge the reality without attacking your identity. Over time, this fair approach rebuilds the inner connection you have with yourself. It teaches you that you are worthy even when you are imperfect. Another powerful way to challenge the belief is to notice what mistakes actually give you. They reveal where you need to focus. They show you limits you were not aware of. They humble you enough to pay attention. They remind you of what matters. If you look closely, Many of your best decisions today came from lessons learned in past mistakes. Without those lessons, you would not have the same clarity or direction. Mistakes are not a mark of worthlessness. They are the raw material of wisdom. The belief that mistakes make you worthless often comes from comparing yourself to others. You see people who seem to migrate smoothly, and you assume they are better because they do not fail. But this is an illusion. You do not see their errors, because most people do not broadcast their struggles. Every person you admire has made countless mistakes. The difference is not that they avoided them. It is that they refuse to let those mistakes decide their worth. You also have to watch the language you use when talking about your mistakes. If you say, "I ruined everything," you make the mistake bigger than it is. If you say, "I am terrible at this," you turn one error into a permanent identity. Be precise. Say, "I mishandled this situation," or "I got this wrong." Specific words keep the mistake in its proper place. Exaggerated words make it a judgment on your entire being. Clarity in language helps protect your sense of worth. Challenging the belief also requires patience. You cannot undo years of harsh self-judgment in one moment. The old thought will still appear after each error. But now, instead of accepting it, you can confront it. You can remind yourself, a mistake is not who I am. You can remind yourself of past times you recovered. Each time you do this, you weaken the old belief. Over time, it loses power, and a new belief takes its place. The belief that mistakes are part of growth, not proof of worthlessness. The person who accepts mistakes as part of life is free. Free to try, free to learn, free to grow. The person who equates mistakes with worthlessness is trapped. Trapped in fear, trapped in hesitation, trapped in shame. You must decide which life you want. If you want freedom, you must challenge the false belief every time it appears. You must separate action from identity, lesson from worth, growth from condemnation. Remember, your worth is not up for debate. It does not rise or fall based on mistakes. It is constant. Mistakes will continue to happen, but they are only information. They are moments to adjust, not reasons to collapse. The sooner you break the connection between mistakes and worth, the sooner you will live with courage, resilience, and peace. Number 5. Write down daily wins to train your brain. One of the most practical ways to stop being so hard on yourself is to train your brain to notice what is working, instead of always focusing on what went wrong. The human mind has a natural tendency to magnify mistakes and downplay progress. That is why, at the end of the day, many people remember the one error they made but forget the 10 things they did well. Over time, this habit creates an inner story that says, "I never do enough," or "I always fall short." The truth is often very different. But the brain keeps reinforcing the negative because it has been trained to do so. You can reverse this by deliberately writing down daily wins. Writing them down is more than just thinking about them. When you put something on paper, it becomes visible and real. A thought can vanish quickly, but words written in front of you remind you that the progress actually happened. Imagine ending your day by recording 3 small wins. It could be finishing a task you were avoiding, choosing a healthier meal, having a meaningful conversation, or simply staying calm in a stressful moment. These might not feel like grand achievements, but when written down, they accumulate and begin to shift your perception. You start to see that each day holds evidence of growth and effort. The act of writing daily wins rewires how your brain looks at your life. Instead of scanning for flaws, it begins to search for proof of progress. This is a powerful shift, because what you consistently look for, you find. If you train yourself to look for wins, your brain develops the habit of seeing them naturally. Over weeks and months, you stop judging yourself only by your shortcomings and begin to value yourself for your efforts. This does not mean ignoring mistakes. It means giving equal weight to what you are doing right. Daily wins also build momentum. When you recognize progress even in small ways, it fuels motivation to keep going. Think about how often people quit their goals because they convince themselves nothing is working. If they had written down the small signs of progress, they would have realized growth was happening all along. For example, someone trying to build discipline might write, "I woke up on time today." It seems minor, But seeing that pattern on paper day after day proves change is real. Over time, those small wins become the foundation for bigger achievements. Another benefit of writing wins is that it gives you a tool against negative self-talk. When your mind says, "You are not doing enough," you can look back at your record and see clear evidence that you are moving forward. That evidence matters because the brain believes what it can see. Having a notebook full of wins is like carrying proof of your progress wherever you go. It is difficult to argue with your own written record. This weakens the habit of harsh self-judgment and strengthens self-respect. It is important to understand that daily wins do not have to be extraordinary. Many people believe their progress because it does not feel dramatic. But real growth is built on small, repeated actions. If you are waiting for a massive breakthrough before you allow yourself to feel proud, you will spend most of your life feeling disappointed. Recording small wins trains you to value the steps that actually make change possible. Finishing a workout, staying focused on a project, listening to someone with patience. These are wins. They may not bring instant applause, but they build a life of discipline, resilience, and purpose. This practice also trains gratitude. When you write down what went well, you shift from focusing on lack to appreciating what you already have. Gratitude strengthens mental health, reduces stress, and improves relationships. You begin to notice that your days are not just filled with problems, but also with moments of success, growth, and connection. Over time, this makes you less likely to attack yourself and more likely to encourage yourself. There is a psychological principle at work here called reinforcement. Behavior that gets acknowledged is more likely to be repeated. When you write down wins, you reinforce them. You tell your brain, "This action mattered." That reinforcement makes you more likely to do it again tomorrow. Without acknowledgement, the brain dismisses progress and only fixates on mistakes. That is why so many people stay stuck. They repeat the negative while ignoring the positive. Writing daily wins breaks that pattern. Consider how this habit changes your identity. If you end every day focusing only on mistakes, your identity becomes, "I am someone who always fails." But if you end every day writing down wins, your identity becomes, "I am someone who keeps making progress." Identity drives behavior. When you see yourself as a person who wins daily, even in small ways, you naturally start making choices that align with that identity. You create a positive cycle instead of a destructive one. Some people resist this habit because it feels too simple. They think something so basic cannot make a difference. But simplicity is what makes it powerful. You do not need a complex system to shift your mindset. You need consistency. 5 minutes a night with a pen and paper can transform how you see yourself over time. The key is to stick with it long enough for your brain to adjust. It also helps to be specific. Instead of writing "I had a good day," write "I completed the project I was nervous about," or "I stayed calm when traffic delayed me." Specific wins remind you of the exact effort you made. They make the progress clear and undeniable. Vague words lose impact, but detailed wins give your brain something solid to hold on to. Think about how this practice will serve you in difficult seasons. Life will bring setbacks, failures, and disappointment. In those moments, your mind will be tempted to convince you that you are losing in every area. But if you have built the habit of recording wins, you will have a record that proves otherwise. You will be able to flip back through the pages and see all the ways you kept moving forward, even when it felt slow. That reminder can give you the strength to keep going when you would otherwise give up. This habit also teaches you to slow down. Writing requires you to pause and reflect, instead of rushing through the day without awareness. That reflection helps you see patterns you would miss in the rush of daily life. You might realize that your wins often come from the times you planned ahead, or that your mood improves when you exercise. These insights allow you to make better choices moving forward. Without reflection, those patterns remain hidden. When you make this a daily practice, your self-perception transforms. Instead of going to bed thinking about your failures, you go to bed with evidence of your effort. Instead of waking up feeling behind, you wake up motivated to add to your list of wins. Over time, this builds a steady confidence that does not depend on perfection. It depends on recognizing and reinforcing growth. That is what it means to train your brain. If you want to stop being so hard on yourself, You cannot rely on feelings alone. Feelings will trick you into believing you are even when you are progressing. Facts are stronger than feelings. Writing daily wins gives you facts. Tangible proof that your effort matters. That proof is what keeps you grounded when emotions try to convince you otherwise. The person who commits to this habit is no longer at the mercy of self-criticism. They build resilience, they see progress clearly, and strengthen their identity as someone capable of growth. That is the kind of mindset that carries you through challenges and allows you to build a life of purpose and strength. And it begins with something as simple as writing down your wins each day. Number 6, catch the moment you compare and redirect your focus. Comparison is one of the biggest reasons people are so hard on themselves. You might wake up feeling fine, but the moment you scroll through social media, you see someone living in a bigger house, driving a better car, or announcing another achievement. Instantly, your mind tells you that you are behind. At work, you might notice a colleague getting recognition and feel like your own effort is invisible. Even among friends, you may hear about their progress and suddenly question your own life. Comparison steals peace faster than almost anything else. The dangerous part is how automatic it has become. You rarely notice it happening until you already feel discouraged. That is why you must train yourself to catch the moment you compare and redirect your focus back to your own path. Comparison often happens because your brain is wired to measure. Humans naturally look around to see where they stand. This was once useful for survival, but in today's world, it creates constant pressure. Every time you compare yourself to another person, you place your worth in their hands. You measure your progress with their timeline. You use their achievements as a ruler for your own life. The result is dissatisfaction, no matter how well you are actually doing. Even people who are accomplishing great things feel inadequate when they compare themselves to someone else. That shows you it is not about reality. It is about focus. The first step is awareness. You need to notice the exact moment comparison starts. Maybe it happens when you scroll online, when you walk into a room full of successful people, or when you hear news about someone you know. Pay attention to the physical signs, the sudden drop in energy, the tight feeling in your chest, or the thought that whispers, "Why am I not there yet?" The moment you notice these signs, pause. Do not let the thought continue unchecked. This pause is where your power lies. Once you have caught the comparison, you must redirect your focus. Ask yourself, what am I working on right now? What matters in my journey today? Bring your attention back to your own progress. If you are building discipline, remind yourself of the steps you are taking. If you are working on financial stability, remind yourself of the choices you are making daily to improve. If you are improving relationships, focus on the effort you are giving to grow. The redirection is not about ignoring others. It is about refusing to lose sight of your own road. Comparison often leads to harsh self-talk. You might say, "They are better than me," or "I will never catch up." But when you redirect focus, you shift the language. Instead of "I am behind," you say, "I am moving at my pace." Instead of "I am not enough," you say, "I am building my own foundation." These statements do not deny reality. They keep you from turning another person's success into your personal defeat. It is also important to remember that what you see of others is rarely the full story. People show the highlights, not the struggles. That colleague getting recognition may have been working late nights for years. That friend posting pictures may be hiding challenges you do not see. When you compare, you are comparing your private struggles with someone else's public display. That is never a fair measurement. Redirect your focus by reminding yourself that every life has hidden battles, and your worth is not decided by what others show. Another way to break comparison is to define your own standard. If you do not know what success means to you, you will always borrow someone else's definition. Sit down and decide what matters most in your life. Maybe it is building strong relationships. Maybe it is creating financial independence. Maybe it is maintaining health. Or maybe it is growing your knowledge. When your standards are clear, you can measure yourself against them instead of constantly using other people as a mirror. Then when comparison arises, you can redirect by asking, does their success change what I have chosen for myself? The answer is always no. Redirecting focus also means celebrating your wins. If you catch yourself comparing, immediately recall something you accomplished recently. It could be as simple as finishing a task, keeping a promise, or overcoming a challenge. Focus on that. Let it remind you that you are not stagnant. you are progressing. This builds confidence that your journey has value, regardless of what others are doing. Another powerful tool is gratitude. When you feel envy or discouragement from comparison, shift into gratitude for what you already have. Instead of thinking about what others gained, think about what you have built. Gratitude redirects your energy from scarcity to abundance. It reminds you that your life already holds blessings and opportunities. This shift makes it easier to stop punishing yourself for not being someone else. Redirecting focus is not about pretending others' success does not exist. You can admire them, even learn from them, without turning it into self-destruction. If you see someone achieving something you want, let it inspire you rather than crush you. Instead of saying, "I will never reach that," say, "This shows me what is." That small change in focus turns comparison into motivation. You must also limit your exposure to triggers of comparison. If certain social media accounts make you feel inadequate, reduce your time on them. If certain conversations always leave you feeling small, protect your boundary. You do not have to expose yourself to endless sources of discouragement. Choosing your environment wisely is part redirecting focus. The less time you spend feeding comparison, the more time you can invest in building yourself. Over time, catching and redirecting becomes a skill. At first, comparison may pull you down quickly, but as you practice, you will notice it earlier and shift faster. You will go from hours of discouragement to minutes, then from minutes to seconds. Eventually, the habit becomes so natural that comparison loses its grip. You will still notice others, but you will not turn their success into your suffering. This practice also builds resilience. Life will always present people who are ahead in some area. There will always be someone younger, richer, smarter, or more talented. If you tie your worth to outrunning everyone else, you will never feel peace. But if you learn to redirect focus, you will stay grounded in your own growth. You will no longer be shaken every time one passes you in one area. You will understand that their path does not erase yours. The deeper truth is this: comparison is endless, but focus is limited. You cannot control who succeeds around you, but you can control where you direct your attention. If you spend it all looking outward, you will lose yourself. If you invest it inward, you will build strength, patience, and consistency. That is how real progress is made, not by chasing someone else's timeline, but by committing to your own. When you catch yourself comparing, remind yourself that you have a choice. You can feed the thought and let it poison your confidence, or you can redirect it and use your energy for growth. That choice repeated daily becomes a habit, and that habit becomes freedom. Freedom from constant judgment, freedom from self-hate, freedom from the false belief that your worth depends on someone else's performance. Your future will not be decided by who you compared yourself to. It will be decided by how well you managed your own focus. Every time you catch and redirect, you reclaim power. You stop giving it away to the world and start investing it in yourself. That is how you stop being so hard on yourself and start living with strength. Number 7, understand your limits and stop demanding endless output. One of the hardest truths for many people to accept is that you have limits. Your body has limits. Your mind has limits. Your energy has limits. But the world around you often tells a different story. It says you should always be working, always producing, always achieving. The moment you pause, you feel guilty, as if resting means you are wasting your life. This belief drives many into exhaustion and leaves them frustrated, because no matter how much they do, they believe it is never enough. To stop being so hard on yourself, you must recognize the reality of your limits and stop demanding endless output. Limits do not mean weakness. They are simply part of being human. Just as your phone battery must recharge, so must you. If you ignore your limits, you will push yourself to the point of burnout. Burnout does not only drain energy, it steals joy. It makes even the activities you once loved feel like burdens. This happens because you have been forcing yourself to operate beyond capacity, day after day without pause. By respecting your limits, you protect your ability to keep moving forward with consistency, instead of collapsing under the weight of constant demand. The problem begins when people confuse self-worth with productivity. You may believe that your value depends on how much you accomplish in a day. If you get through a long list, you feel worthy. If you fall short, you call yourself lazy. This mindset forces you into a cycle of constant pressure, because there will always be more to do than time to do it. No matter how much you accomplish, you still find a reason to criticize yourself. This is not discipline, it is self-punishment. True discipline includes knowing when to stop, when to rest, and when to say no. Understanding your limits requires paying attention to your body and mind. When you are constantly tired, when your concentration fades quickly, when your patience disappears, those are signals. They are not signs of weakness. They are signs that you have pushed too far. Too many ignore these signals and keep forcing themselves. But ignoring them only makes the cost higher later. Your health declines, your motivation weakens, and your relationships suffer. By noticing and respecting these signals, you are not giving up. You are ensuring you have the strength to continue tomorrow. There is also a false belief that doing more always leads to better results. In reality, endless output often lowers the quality of your work. When you are exhausted, you make more mistakes, you lose creativity, and you stop enjoying the process. But when you balance effort with recovery, your work improves. You approach challenges with clarity, and you produce with focus instead of force. It is not about how much you do, but about how well you do it. To practice this in daily life, you must set realistic expectations. Instead of demanding perfection in every area, choose a few priorities and give them your best energy. Accept that you cannot do everything in one day. When you finish what matters most, allow yourself to rest without guilt. That rest is not wasted time. It is part of the cycle of productivity. A rested mind makes better decisions. A restored body has more strength. By scheduling rest, you are building sustainability into your life. Another important step is learning to say no. Endless output often comes from trying to please everyone. You take on more tasks than you can handle, then criticize yourself for falling behind. The truth is, saying yes to everything is the fastest way to drain yourself. Respecting your limits means choosing carefully where to invest your energy. You cannot be everywhere, and you cannot do everything. By saying no to what is unnecessary, you protect your time for what is essential. You must also redefine success. If you measure success only by how much you do, you will never feel satisfied. There will always be another project, another responsibility, another goal. Success should not be endless activity, but about meaningful progress. If you worked with focus today, if you kept promises, if you took care of yourself, that is success. It may not look dramatic, but it builds a foundation for long-term growth. There is great freedom in accepting that limits are normal. Once you do, you stop fighting yourself. You stop feeling ashamed for being tired. You stop calling yourself weak for needing breaks. Instead, you see that caring for your limits allows you to give more when it truly matters. People who burn out are not the strongest. They are the ones who ignored their limits, the thens. The strongest are those who know how to push hard, and also how to recharge fully. Think about what happens when you drive a car without ever checking the fuel or the engine. Eventually it breaks down. You would not call the car worthless for needing fuel. You would recognize that it is how it operates. You are the same. Your energy is not infinite, and that is not a flaw. It is simply how you are designed. By treating yourself with this understanding, you prevent breakdowns and keep yourself moving with strength. You may believe that people who achieve great things never stop, but if you study them closely, you will see they value rest, use, and recovery. They do not demand constant output in every direction. They concentrate effort, they prioritize, and they allow time for restoration. That is why they last. Endless output is not sustainable. And without sustainability, success can't last either. To truly stop being so hard on yourself, remind yourself daily that rest is part of progress. Give yourself permission to pause, permission to breathe, permission to recover. It does not make you less. It makes you ready for what comes next. When you live this way, you become more consistent, more balanced, and more at peace. You work with strength instead of strain, and you measure yourself with fairness instead of endless demand. The most successful life is not the one lived at maximum speed every second. It is the one built with rhythm, effort, and rest, work and reflection. action, and recovery. That rhythm keeps you growing without breaking. Once you accept your limits and stop demanding endless output, you finally give yourself the space to live with clarity and confidence instead of exhaustion and guilt. Number 8, acknowledge emotions openly instead of hiding them inside. Most people are taught from an early age to hide their emotions. They hear phrases like stay strong, don't cry, or hold it together. Over time, they learn to push their feelings deep inside, believing that showing emotions is a weakness. What they don't realize is that this habit turns emotions into pressure that never leaves. You can bury frustration, sadness, or fear, but it doesn't disappear. It lingers in your body and your mind, showing up later as stress, exhaustion, or even illness. To stop being so hard on yourself, you must allow your emotions to be acknowledged openly instead of hiding them away. Acknowledging emotions does not mean losing control. It means being honest with yourself about what you feel in the moment. If you are angry, you admit it. If you are disappointed, you say it clearly to yourself. If you are sad, you allow yourself to feel it without shame. Denying these emotions creates an internal war, where one part of you feels something and the other part tries to silence it. That war drains your energy and keeps you from clarity. But when you acknowledge your emotions, you reduce their power. You recognize them as temporary experiences instead of permanent identities. When you hide emotions, they leak out in destructive ways. Anger that is never admitted turns into bitterness. Sadness that is buried becomes numbness. Fear that is ignored turns into constant anxiety. You may not even realize the connection, because it feels like a normal part of life. But it started from unacknowledged feelings. Being open with yourself about emotions allows them to move through you instead of staying stuck. This is how you protect your well-being. There is also a strong psychological effect in naming emotions. When you put a word to what you are feeling, your brain shifts from reaction to awareness. Instead of being consumed by the feeling, you are observing it. Saying to yourself, I feel frustrated, gives you space between who you are and what you feel. That space is where choice lives. You can choose how to respond instead of being controlled by the emotion. This is why acknowledgement is so powerful. You may think acknowledging emotions makes you weak, but it does the opposite. Weakness is pretending you are fine when you are falling apart. Strength is being honest enough to face your inner world directly. When you acknowledge your emotions, you build resilience. You tell yourself, I can handle the truth of what I feel. That truth gives you clarity, and clarity gives you control. Acknowledging emotions also strengthens relationships. When you hide what you feel, others are left guessing. They may think you are distant, cold, or uninterested, when in reality you are simply holding everything inside. But when you communicate honestly, people can connect with you on a real level. Saying, I feel overwhelmed today, or I am upset about this situation, opens the door to understanding and support. Hiding everything only isolates you further. Another danger of hiding emotions is that it creates an unrealistic standard for yourself. You start to believe you should never feel down, never feel angry, never feel afraid. Every time those emotions appear, you criticize yourself for being human. This is why many people are so hard on themselves. They think emotions make them weak. But emotions are not flaws. They are signals. They show you what matters, what hurts, and what needs attention. Ignoring those signals is like ignoring warning lights on a car dashboard. Acknowledging them allows you to take action before the damage grows. Being open with emotions does not mean you let them control every choice. It means you respect them enough to hear what they are saying. For example, anger might be telling you that a boundary was crossed. Sadness might be telling you that something valuable was lost. Fear might be telling you that you are entering unfamiliar territory. When you listen, you gain information that helps you make better decisions. When you hide, you lose that guidance. One practical way to acknowledge emotions is through journaling. Writing down what you feel gives the emotions a safe place to exist. You might write, I feel disappointed about today's results, or I feel anxious about tomorrow. Putting the words on paper stops the cycle of rumination in your mind. It creates distance and helps you process clearly. Another method is speaking your emotions out loud. even if only to yourself. Hearing the words can make the feelings real enough to release them. Acknowledgement also involves removing judgment. Many people label emotions as good or bad. They allow themselves to feel happiness, but punish themselves for feeling anger or sadness. This judgment adds another layer of pressure. Instead of just feeling the emotion, you now feel guilty for having it. The truth is, emotions are neutral. They are natural responses to life. By allowing them without judgment, you create freedom to experience life fully, without constant self-criticism. Think about how children express emotions. When they are upset, they cry. When they are happy, they laugh loudly. When they are scared, they cling to someone they trust. They do not hide or suppress. As adults, many lose this openness because they fear judgment. But the cost is high. Suppression leads to disconnection from yourself. Relearning the habit of openness restores that connection and makes you whole again. Acknowledging emotions also reduces the intensity of stress. Studies show that simply labeling a feeling lowers activity in the part of the brain that reacts with fear and stress. That means when you say, "I feel anxious right now," your body actually calms down. By hiding emotions, you increase tension. By naming them, you reduce it. This is not theory. It is a measurable change in your nervous system. There is also freedom in sharing emotions with trusted people. Carrying everything inside makes you believe you are alone in your struggles. But when you open up to someone safe, you realize others feel the same things. That connection reduces shame and builds strength. It's you that emotions are part of being human, not evidence of weakness. Over time, acknowledging emotions creates a healthier self-image. Instead of thinking, "I must always be strong," you begin to think, "I am strong because I face what I feel." Instead of thinking, "I can't show weakness," you begin to think, "It takes courage to be honest." This shift transforms how you treat yourself. You no longer punish yourself for experiencing emotions. You respect yourself for being real. If you want to stop being so hard on yourself, you cannot keep pretending that emotions do not exist. You must face them openly, name them honestly, and allow them to move through you. By doing so, you free yourself from the heavy burden of suppression. You make space for healing, growth, and peace. You stop living as if perfection is the goal and start living as a full human being with real feelings. The life you want cannot be built on denial. It must be built on truth. The truth is that emotions are part of you, and acknowledging them is an act of strength, not weakness. When you live this way, you will notice that you are gentler with yourself, more patient with others, and more resilient when challenges come. You will no longer waste energy hiding. Instead, you will use your energy to grow. That is the power of acknowledging emotions open. Number 9, set realistic goals that match your current capacity. One of the main reasons people stay hard on themselves is because they set goals that do not match their current capacity. They look at where they want to be and immediately create expectations that are far beyond what they can realistically sustain right now. They demand instant transformation, rapid progress, and immediate perfection. When they inevitably fall short, they punish themselves and conclude they are failures. The problem was never their potential. The problem was that the goals were not designed for their present capacity. To move forward with strength, you must learn to set realistic goals that fit where you are today, while still stretching you toward where you want to go. A realistic goal is not about lowering your standards or being lazy. It is about aligning ambition with ability. Every person has a certain amount of time, energy, skill, and resources available. When you set goals that ignore those limits, you create frustration. For example, if you are just starting to exercise and you demand yourself to run 10 miles on the first day, you will feel defeated when your body gives out after 1 mile. But if you set the goal to walk briskly for 20 minutes, you will succeed, build momentum, and gradually increase your capacity. The mistake most people make is aiming too far ahead of their current capacity and then calling themselves weak when they cannot meet the expectation. This mindset shows up in many areas of life. Someone trying to manage finances may demand themselves to save half their income immediately, even though their expenses do not allow it yet. Someone working on discipline may expect to wake up every day despite never practicing consistent sleep routines before. Someone learning a new skill may set the goal of mastery in weeks, when it realistically takes months or years. These goals sound impressive, but they are not sustainable, and unsustainable goals always lead to self-criticism. Setting realistic goals means breaking big ambitions into steps you can actually take right now. If your long-term dream is to build a business, your realistic goal today may be to research for 1 hour or talk to someone with experience. If your long-term aim is to get in shape, your realistic goal may be to complete a short workout 3 times a week. These smaller goals match your current capacity while building toward the larger vision. The key is that they are achievable now, not in some ideal future version of yourself. You would also consider your season of life. A parent with young children cannot operate on the same schedule as someone with no dependents. A person working 2 jobs cannot set the same goals as someone with unlimited free time. Comparing yourself to others while ignoring your own responsibilities sets you up for disappointment. Realistic goals respect your circumstances without making excuses. They allow you to progress within the boundaries of your life today. Another important part of setting realistic goals is measuring effort instead of only outcomes. Outcomes take time and often depend on factors outside your control. Effort is fully within your hand. If your goal is to improve your health, focus on showing up for workouts consistently, not just on reaching a specific number on the scale. If your goal is financial stability, focus on tracking expenses daily, not only on hitting a savings target immediately. By measuring effort, you give yourself credit for actions that build long-term results. This is the constant self-criticism that comes from expecting instant outcomes. When you set goals that match your capacity, you build confidence. Every completed goal becomes evidence that you can follow through. That evidence accumulates and ends your self-belief. On the other hand, unrealistic goals constantly feed the story that you are failing. This is why people who are capable often feel incapable, because they are measuring themselves against goals that were never achievable to begin with. It is also crucial to adjust goals as your capacity changes. What feels realistic today may feel too small tomorrow after you have grown. If you started with a goal of walking 20 minutes, over time you may expand to running for 30. If you started with saving a small percentage of income, you may increase it as your earnings grow. The point is that your goals evolve as your capacity expands. Setting realistic goals is not about staying small forever. It is about building gradually, without destroying your confidence in the process. Unrealistic goals often come from impatience. You want results quickly, so you set goals that promise speed. But impatience always backfires. The truth is, sustainable change requires time and consistency. When you set realistic goals, you respect the process. You understand that long-term growth comes from daily effort, not from sudden leap. By slowing down to a pace you can handle, you actually reach your destination faster, because you do not burn out along the way. Another danger of unrealistic goals is that they blind you to progress. If you set the bar impossibly high, you will ignore the improvements you are actually making. For example, if you demand to double your income in 1 year but only manage to increase it by 22%, you might call yourself a failure. But in reality, that 20% growth is meaningful progress. A realistic goal would have helped you see that as a success, instead of dismissing it. Practical steps to set realistic goals include breaking them into smaller milestones, scheduling them into your actual calendar, and making them measurable. Do not just say, "I want to get fit." Say, "I will complete 3 workouts this week." Do not just say, "I want to save money." Say, "I will put aside a set amount every month." Vague goals encourage self-criticism because you can never tell if you are succeeding. Clear, specific goals give you proof of progress. There is also value in celebrating completed goals. Each time you reach a milestone that matched your capacity, take a moment to acknowledge it. This reinforces your belief in your ability to grow. Many people skip this step because they are already focused on the next goal. But by doing so, they rob themselves of motivation. Celebration does not mean stopping progress. It means recognizing the foundation you are building. In the end, setting realistic goals is about fairness. It is about treating yourself with the same logic you would use with someone else. If a friend wanted to learn piano, You would not expect them to master it in a week. You would encourage them to practice a little every day. If a child wanted to play a sport, you would not expect them to compete like a professional on the first day. You would applaud their effort as they grew. Yet when it comes yourself, you often demand perfection immediately. Realistic goals return fairness to the way you treat yourself. By practicing this, you reduce self-criticism and build steady confidence. You stop calling yourself lazy for not meeting impossible standards. You stop labeling yourself a failure for not achieving in months what realistically takes years. Instead, you create a path you can walk on daily, with progress you can measure and believe in. That is how you stop being so hard on yourself. Not by lowering your potential, but by respecting your current capacity, while building toward greater capacity over time. Number 10, choose patience with growth instead of constant self-punishment. Growth takes time. No matter what area of life you are working on, your career, your health, your relationships, or your mindset, progress never happens overnight. Yet many people act as if they should transform instantly. They expect themselves to be disciplined in a week, financially free in a month, or emotionally healed in a short period of time. When they inevitably fall short of these unrealistic timelines, they respond with punishment. They call themselves failures. They convince themselves they are not capable. They carry shame instead of patience. This constant self-punishment not only slows progress, it destroys the motivation to continue. If you want real change, you must choose patience with growth instead of attacking yourself for not being perfect right away. Patience does not mean passivity. It does not mean sitting back and waiting without action. Patience means respecting the process. It means understanding that growth is built through steady, repeated effort. You cannot plant a seed and demand fruit the next day. You cannot expect your mind or your body to shift instantly after years of old habits. Real growth requires patience because it unfolds gradually. When you punish yourself for not being there yet, you ignore the truth of how progress works. Self-punishment shows up in many ways. It might be the harsh words you tell yourself after missing a goal. It might be the guilt you feel when you take a break. It might be the disappointment that lingers even after you have achieved something meaningful, because you think it was not fast enough. This punishment creates a cycle where growth feels like pain instead of purpose. The more you punish yourself, the less motivated you become. Instead of building strength, you drain it. Patience with growth allows you to see improvement for what it is: incremental, uneven, but still progress. Some days you will move quickly, other days slowly. Some weeks will feel productive, others will feel like setbacks. That is normal. Growth is not a straight line. By choosing patience, you accept these fluctuations without tearing yourself down. You learn to see the bigger picture instead of judging yourself by one bad day or one mistake. Without patience, you set timelines that create constant stress. You demand results by a certain date and criticize yourself when you fall short. But life rarely follows your deadlines. Circumstances change, challenges arise, and progress takes longer than expected. If you attach your worth to those timelines, you will live in endless frustration. Patience allows you to adjust, to adapt, and to keep moving without turning delays into personal failure. Patience also helps you focus on effort instead of only outcomes. When you punish yourself, you only look at what you have not achieved yet. You ignore the effort you are putting in every day. But effort matters, because it is the only thing fully in your control. You cannot control the pace of results, but you can control showing up consistently. By being patient, you value the effort as much as the outcome. That mindset keeps you moving forward when results take longer than you hope. Think about the damage punishment does to your mindset. Every time you attack yourself, you weaken your self-belief. You create a story in your head that says, "I will never change." That story becomes heavier with each repetition. Eventually, you stop trying because you believe the punishment more than the possibility. Patience breaks that story. It says, "I am still learning. I am still building. I am not finished yet." This story gives you strength instead of stealing it. Choosing patience also means allowing yourself to rest without guilt. Rest is not wasted time. It is part of growth. A mind and body that never rest cannot sustain effort. Without patience, rest feels like weakness, and you punish yourself for taking it. With patience, rest feels like preparation, and you use it to recharge. This shift allows you to sustain growth for the long term instead of burning out in the short term. Patience requires perspective. Look back at your life and notice how long meaningful change has taken. The skills you have today were built over years, not days. The discipline you have developed came from countless repetitions, not instant decisions. When you remember that past growth required time, you remind yourself that current growth will too. That perspective gives you compassion for yourself in the present. Another reason patience is essential is because growth often brings setbacks. No one moves forward without falling at times. If you punish yourself for every setback, you will quit. The progress compound. Patience allows you to see setbacks as part of the process. Instead of saying, "I failed again," you say, "This is part of learning." That small shift in language keeps you on the path instead of abandoning it. Patience also builds resilience in the face of comparison. When you see others succeeding faster, impatience tells you that you are behind. Punishment tells you that you are not good enough. Patience tells you that your timeline is different and that growth is not a race. This mindset protects you from discouragement and keeps your focus on your own journey. You may fear that patience will make you soft or lazy, but true patience is active. It means continuing to work even when results are not immediate. It means staying committed without demanding perfection. It means trusting that steady effort will pay off over time. Patience is not about lowering standards. It is about giving yourself space to reach them realistically. If you want to practice patience, start by noticing when you punish yourself. Pay attention to the language you use after a mistake. Do you call yourself useless? Do you say you will never change? When those thoughts arise, pause and choose a patient perspective. Instead, say, "I am still learning," or "I will get better with time." These are not excuses. They are acknowledgments of how growth actually works. You can also practice patience setting longer timelines. Instead of demanding a result in a week, give yourself months. Instead of expecting transformation in a year, give yourself several. When you extend the timeline, you remove the constant pressure and allow yourself to enjoy the journey. You still work hard, but you no longer live under the illusion that everything must happen immediately. Patience changes the way you experience growth. Without it, growth feels like punishment, filled with guilt, shame, and frustration. With it, growth feels like purpose, filled with learning, persistence, and hope. The difference is not in the challenges you face, but in the way you treat yourself through them. If you choose punishment, you create unnecessary suffering. If you choose patience, you create resilience. Every person who has achieved lasting success has practiced patience. They may not have spoken about it, but it was there in the hours of practice, in the repeated attempts, in the long years of effort. They did not punish themselves for not being perfect immediately. They understood that mastery takes time. If you want to stop being so hard on yourself, you must embrace the same truth. Patience is not weakness, it is wisdom. It recognizes that growth cannot be forced, only cultivated. It respects the time required for real change, and it protects you from the self-inflicted pain of unrealistic expectations. If you choose patience with growth instead of constant punishment, you give yourself the chance to experience progress without breaking yourself down in the process. That choice is what allows you to keep moving forward with strength, confidence, and peace. So here's the truth. Being hard on yourself has never made you stronger. It has only made you doubt the progress you've already made. Real growth begins the moment you decide to treat yourself with fairness, patience, and respect. You deserve to move forward without carrying the weight of constant self-criticism. Now it's your turn. Take what you've heard today and start applying it in your daily life. Notice the way you talk to yourself. Write down your wins and remind yourself that mistakes are not the end. They're part of the journey. If you do this, you'll see a new level of confidence and clarity begin to grow. And if this message connected with you, don't stop here. There's more waiting for you that will challenge your thinking, and push you to live stronger and smarter. Come back for the next video, because your best growth is only just beginning.